subscribe and give us a like because every thumbs up unravels a mystery. Let us dive into today's mystery. In the heart of Victorian London, amidst the sprawling empire of industry and innovation, lay a district that time seemed to have forgotten. Whitechapel, a maze of narrow alleys shrouded in eternal twilight, where the fog clung to the cobblestones like a living entity, whispering secrets of the night. This was a place of stark contrasts in 1888, where the glow of gas lamps barely pierced the darkness, casting long shadows that seemed to harbor whispered tales of despair. The air was thick, not just with the industrial smog that blanketed the city, but with an omnipresent sense of dread. The residents of Whitechapel, a melting pot of the downtrodden, lived their lives in the margins, eking out existences amidst the squalor. Here, the poor rubbed shoulders with immigrants seeking a fresh start, all caught in the relentless gears of an uncaring metropolis. As summer waned, an ominous chill settled over Whitechapel, one that seeped into the bones of its inhabitants. Rumors swirled in the pubs and markets, tales of darkness that walked among them, preying on the most vulnerable. Little did they know the shadows of Whitechapel were about to birth a legend, a phantom that would etch its name into the annals of true crime as the embodiment of fear itself. Jack the Ripper. This introduction sets the stage for a journey into one of history's most chilling mysteries, inviting the audience to step back to a place where evil lurks around every corner, waiting to strike. As the clock struck the early hours of August 31st, 1888, an ominous silence enveloped the gaslit streets of Whitechapel. It was a silence that would soon be shattered by a discovery that marked the beginning of a reign of terror. Mary Ann Nichols, known as Polly to her friends aged 43, would become the harbinger of a nightmare that had descended upon London's East End. Polly's life, fraught with hardship and marred by a descent into alcoholism and poverty, was not uncommon in the squalid conditions of Whitechapel. Yet her tragic end would distinguish her from the masses, as she became the first of the canonical 5 victims of the entity that would come to be known as Jack the Ripper. Her body was discovered on Bucks Row, a secluded thoroughfare synonymous with the deprivation that plagued the area. The brutality of her murder was shocking. Her throat was slashed deeply, her abdomen grotesquely mutilated with a precision that suggested a sinister expertise. The savagery of the act was unlike anything the local populace and the London Metropolitan Police had encountered. It was a brutal statement, the beginning of a cryptic and macabre puzzle that would confound and terrorize the city. The news of Polly Nichols's murder spread through Whitechapel like wildfire, igniting a cauldron of fear, speculation, and morbid fascination. The police were under immense pressure to bring the perpetrator to justice. But little did they know this was just the beginning. The killer, emboldened and shrouded in mystery, would continue to haunt the alleyways of Whitechapel, leaving a trail of bloodshed in his wake. As the investigation into Polly Nichols's murder unfolded, it became clear that Whitechapel was dealing with a predator of unprecedented cunning and brutality. The community was on edge, teetering on the brink of panic, as they awaited the killer's next move. Little could they anticipate that the autumn of terror had just begun, and the name Jack the Ripper would soon be whispered in the darkest corners of history. The murder of Mary Ann Nichols had barely begun to cast its long shadow over Whitechapel when the killer struck again, setting in motion a terrifying pattern of violence that would leave the district and, indeed, the world reeling. Jack the Ripper would become synonymous with unspeakable horror within a few weeks. Annie Chapman, September 8, 1888. Just over a week after the murder of Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, age 47, was found in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street. Her death was not just another act of violence, it was a message. Like Nichols, Chapman's throat was cut, and her body was mutilated with a ferocity that shocked even the most seasoned investigators. But this time, the killer had taken something more, a chilling trophy, hinting at the dark urges that drove him. The double event, September 30th, 1888. The night that would forever be etched in infamy saw not one but 2 brutal murders. Elizabeth Stride, known as Long Liz, was discovered in Dutfield's yard, her life extinguished by a single swift cut to the throat. Unlike the previous victims, her body was not mutilated, leading some to speculate the killer had been interrupted. Merely an hour later, Catherine Eddowes was found just a short distance away in Mitre Square. Eddowes' mutilations were grotesque, her face disfigured, and her body bearing the killer's signature brutality. This night of rapid, savage violence shocked London to its core, demonstrating the Ripper's audacity and the grave threat he posed. Mary Jane Kelly, November 9th, 1888. The autumn of terror reached its horrifying crescendo with the murder of Mary Jane Kelly, the youngest victim at just 25. Kelly's murder stood apart in its brutality. Her body was found in her room at 13 Miller's Court, virtually destroyed by the ferocity of the attack. It was a murder scene of such savagery and carnal disfigurement that it haunted those who witnessed it. Kelly's death marked the Ripper's final, most gruesome act, a full stop to the canonical murders that had terrorized Whitechapel. With each murder, the Ripper seemed to be evolving, his methods becoming increasingly horrific, his boldness unsettling. The police were floundering, grasping at shadows while pursuing the elusive killer. The public's fear was palpable, a dense fog of terror that settled over London's East End, as thick and impenetrable as the autumn mists that cloaked its streets. Each victim's story added layers to the Ripper's macabre narrative, painting a picture of a predator who was not just killing but relishing the act. Each murder a masterpiece of horror meticulously executed. As the investigation into these heinous crimes deepened, the mystery of the Ripper's identity only grew more complex. Theories abounded, and suspects were scrutinized, but the truth remained as elusive as the shadowy figure responsible for these atrocities. The Ripper had become a ghost in the night, a specter of death long after the echoes of his violence had faded. Amid the escalating horror in Whitechapel, a sinister new element emerged, adding a psychological twist to the physical terror. Correspondence that purported to be from the killer himself. These letters, dripping with macabre taunts and chilling forewarnings, began to arrive at newspapers and police stations, sowing further panic and confusion among the public and investigators alike. The Dear Boss letter. The most infamous of these missives, the Dear Boss letter, postmarked September 27, 1888, chillingly addressed to the Central News Agency, introduced the world to the name Jack the Ripper. The letter, with its menacing tone and disturbing familiarity with the murders, offered a direct glimpse into the mind of the entity behind the atrocities. Its author mocked the police for their inability to catch him, hinting at future crimes with a sinister glee. The authenticity of this letter has been debated over the years, but its impact was undeniable, forever branding the killer with the moniker Jack the Ripper. The Saucy Jackie postcard. Following closely on the heels of the Dear Boss letter, the Saucy Jackie postcard arrived at the Central News Agency. Dated October 1, 1888, it references the double event of Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, boasting of the deeds in a taunting tone. The handwriting bore similarities to the Dear Boss letter, leading many to believe it was from the same source. The From Hell letter. Perhaps the most disturbing of the correspondence was the letter received by George Lusk, head of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, on October 16, 1888. Unlike the previous letters, this one was delivered with a small box containing half of a human kidney, purportedly taken from one of the victims. The gruesomeness of this package, coupled with the letter's chilling content, marked a dark turn in the Ripper's communication, bringing the horror directly to the doorstep of those hunting him. These letters, whether genuine or the work of morbid pranksters, played a significant role in the Ripper saga. They added a layer of psychological warfare to the physical violence, with the killer, or killers, seemingly taunting the authorities and the public. The correspondence contributed to the Ripper's mythos, painting a picture of a murderer who was not just evading capture, but reveling in the terror he sowed. As investigators pored over these letters, desperate for any clue that might lead them to the Ripper, the mystery captivated the public's imagination. The idea that the killer was communicating, taunting those who sought to stop him, only intensified the fear and fascination surrounding the case. These letters from the abyss, whether penned by the Ripper himself or not, underscored the chilling reality that the killer was still out there, hidden in the shadows, watching and waiting. The investigation into the notorious Jack the Ripper murders proved to be a formidable challenge for the London Metropolitan Police. Hindered by the limited forensic tools available in the late 19th century, investigators faced an uphill battle in piecing together the evidence left behind at the crime scenes. With forensic science still in its infancy, the reliance on witness statements and physical evidence often yielded little insight into the identity of the killer. Compounding the difficulty was the overwhelming volume of suspects that came under scrutiny. No one was exempt from suspicion. From doctors to butchers, sailors to aristocrats, the sheer number of potential suspects overwhelmed investigators, diverting resources away from genuine leads and complicating the progress of the investigation. Furthermore, the lack of coherent leads presented a significant obstacle to the detectives apprehending the Ripper. Despite the efforts of seasoned investigators like Frederick Aberline, the killer seemed to vanish into the labyrinthine streets of Whitechapel, leaving behind few clues and leading authorities on a frustrating chase that often ended in dead ends and false leads. The pressure from the public and the press only added to the challenges faced by investigators. With each new murder, public outcry for justice grew louder, fueling speculation and sensationalizing the crimes in the media. This intense scrutiny intensified the already daunting task facing the police as they struggled to maintain control of a case that had captured the public's imagination. Ultimately, despite their best efforts, the identity of Jack the Ripper remains one of history's greatest mysteries. The investigation into the Ripper's identity continues to fascinate and frustrate, serving as a chilling reminder of the dark forces lurking in society's shadows. The legacy of Jack the Ripper remains a haunting enigma, a reminder of the darkness that lurks within society's underbelly. Despite the passage of time, the killer's identity remains elusive, leaving behind a legacy of fear and fascination. Yet amidst the shadows there is hope, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the pursuit of justice. As we honor the victims and contemplate the mysteries surrounding the case, let us remember the lessons learned: vigilance, empathy, and the enduring quest for truth. Ultimately, not the darkness defines us, but the light we strive to bring into the world. Let us cast out the shadows, illuminating the path toward a brighter, safer tomorrow.